thank you very much for joining us today. We are happy to bring to you the 24th webinar of Energy Evaluation Asia Pacific, focusing on the very exciting topic of from data to design using AI to improve clean energy interventions. We have speakers from Asia Clean Energy Partners. Just to let you know, we are recording this webinar, and we hope that it's fine with you. If you have any concern, any problem, please feel free to reach out to us. Uh, Please introduce yourself in the chat. We will be happy to get to know more about you, what you are doing, the organization you are representing, and a quick icebreaker in one word, what you use AI the most for. While you are doing that, I would like to share with you some quick housekeeping rules. As I said, this session is being recorded. If you have any concern, please reach out to us. I would like to request you to keep your microphones muted. If you're not speaking, feel free to keep your videos on for better engagement. There's a chat box option there. Feel free to post your questions in the chat box. The speaker will respond directly in the chat box, or we also have a dedicated Q&A session at the end. I'll be sharing with you a quick feedback survey. We'll be happy to get your feedback and suggestions for webinars in the future. We'll be sharing the recording of this webinar on our YouTube channel. It will be uploaded. It will also be uploaded on our website, and we will be sharing the recording of the webinar as well as slides and summary notes from the presentation through email on our website and as well as on LinkedIn. Now, coming to the agenda for today's webinar, we will start with a quick welcome remarks and setting of the context from Edward, who is an affiliate at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab and also a steering committee member of Energy Evaluation Asia Pacific. Then we will have presentations from Peter and MJ Nanda, who are representing Asia Clean Energy Partners. And then we will have around 10-15 minutes of moderated Q&A session and discussion. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Edward. Ed, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so just a few introductory remarks before we get going. Some of you, particularly those who attended previous webinars, have seen the slides, but there's always a subset of those who are new to EEAP. So Energy Evaluation Asia Pacific is what we call a community of practice, specializing in energy evaluation across Asia Pacific. It was established 8 years ago. It's a nonprofit. It's modeled after the first evaluation organization in the US called IEPEC, or International Energy Program Evaluation Conference. That's been going on since 1983, every 2 years, the odd years. And then expanded into Europe, where it was called International Energy Program and Policy Evaluation Conference. And that's been going on since 2010, so 16 years. And that's held on the even years, every other year. And the mission is for EAP is to take a leadership role in expanding the practice of and capacity for what we call objective evaluation. I'll get back to that shortly, in the energy efficiency and renewable energy program policy arena. What we try to do, develop resources as well as professional expertise to answer a number of different complex questions related to energy, such as what pays off, what works, what doesn't. How can these energy programs and policies be improved, and what actions can be scaled up? Often the energy programs are done at a smaller level, and when you think about your country, how do we get it up to the country level? And we really want to foster the development of self-sustaining evaluation communities so they don't need EEAP around. And we do that through workshops, conferences, webinars, and other web-based tools. So the focus is developing a collaborative approach, and you'll hear more of that about collaboration in today's webinar. Uh, we really emphasize the importance of data for decision making. And then capacity building, we conduct initiatives through training workshops, knowledge sharing platforms, and technical assistance programs. And we prioritize what we call post implementation monitoring evaluation. After a program has been implemented, then we go in to see how well it's doing, tracking outcomes and impacts. We have an organizational structure. We have a steering committee, we have an advisory committee, and a coordinator, Nazir, who's organizing today's webinar. Why evaluation? So recently, a friend and colleague, Juha Uto, who was former director of the Independent Evaluation Office at the Global Environmental Facility, said, at a moment when societies face unprecedented technological and environmental risk, the role of science has never been more critical. From climate change to artificial intelligence, evidence-based decision-making is indispensable. Yet public trust in science is eroding and political support for scientific institutions is weakening. This paradox threatens not only effective policymaking, but the long-term capacity of societies to anticipate, adapt, and innovate. I put this down, present this to you because it's very articulate, much better than what I would have written. So, and he allowed me to use this. So why EEAP and energy evaluations? Well, we focus on three segments. One is focusing on policy adoption and implementation, and we hope we can contribute to that. Behavioral change, we hope we can foster that among stakeholders, policy makers, et cetera, raising awareness. And economic environmental benefits, because there are a number of those. It's just not energy savings. There are a number of associated environmental benefits, such as job creation, enhanced air quality, climate change mitigation, and so on. So that's why we stress the importance of doing good evaluation. We spread the gospel through our mail, through LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube. This, for example, webinar will be being recorded and will be made available on a YouTube channel for people who unfortunately couldn't attend. And we have a website, and we hope you can sign up for, if you haven't already, for future communications. So today's webinar, from data to design using AI to improve clean energy interventions, is a little different than past webinars where each presenter has their own presentation. Peter and MJ, who work together at the Asia Clean Energy Partners, I'll mention a few words about them shortly, but they're going to co-present. So what we'll do is have them both present, and then we'll have question at the end of this, time for questions where we can, you being people listening to the webinar, can ask questions of these people. We do have another webinar scheduled next month with the International Energy Agency. We've done this a year ago, particularly when Renee Stevens talked. She'll give us an update on their energy efficiency progress tracker, which is a really interesting one. And then Lucas will talk about IE's energy efficiency 2025 report that recently came out. So that should be of interest too. I don't know for Paris time how that is good for Bangkok time, for example. I'll let you all figure that one out. But the recording will be made available later as well. So let's start with Peter first, a few introductory remarks about him, and then MJ. Peter is the co-CEO of his company called Asia Clean Energy Partners. He helped found that, and it provides services and solutions for clients in the development and business sectors. He has been based in Bangkok more than 30 years. I've known Peter for more than that since he used to work at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, where I spent my career. He specializes in technical policy and market assessments, knowledge sharing, development, and stakeholder engagement. and they contribute a lot to the clean energy ecosystem in the region. Has many different assignments with international firms like the World Bank and UN agencies, and has I also attended one of his events, the Asia Clean Energy Forum, which he has worked with since 2007 to organize that event. MJ is a team leader at the same company uh, with over 9 years of experience in the Asia Pacific region, and he specializes in solar PV and energy transition initiatives. He has been working in particular in Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Myanmar. And his expertise encompasses project management, feasibility studies, technical due diligence, grid integration assessments, market research, and regulatory compliance. I think I'll stop there for the introductory remarks because we really want to hear what they have to say. So I'm going to hand it over uh, to them and I'll let them proceed. So they'll start sharing their screen and we'll let them figure out who talks first and second. And
Yeah. Thanks so much, Ed. And just seems like yesterday we were goofing around up at the mighty energy efficiency and team up there at the Lawrence Berkeley Lab. It's a pleasure to be here, and I just want to sort of talk about how we. Actually, I'm going to talk about this picture, which is actually super interesting. This picture is in Thailand, and it's a place in Thailand where there's a dam down below, and then there's a bunch of wind turbines going up at the ridge. Behind you, to the right, is a pump storage facility, so that provides peak demand. And all of this forest here is a bike park. So it's a very great example of integrating energy and fun. But so when Ed contacted us about topics we could talk about in terms of evaluation, my business partner and I, Mark Lister, scratched our heads, and we actually don't do evaluation in the way that I know it, like program evaluation. We don't do that very much. I used to do it when I was more involved in the US, like utility evaluations, in order to demonstrate the cost effectiveness of different measures. But then, MJ and I were talking and we realized that a lot of the work that we do with clients is designing programs, and it uses many of the same techniques. Mostly qualitative interviewing, sometimes quantitative design of programs, obviously looking at impact. But we've had over the past 3 years, as AI has come in, we've sort of learned, like all of you on the call, how to use it in a way that makes our work more effective, at least in our case. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I really look forward to having people share their experiences with us, asking us questions, but also talking about how this sparks ideas from their experience. And that I love the framing of this, Ed, as a community of practice, and it's really a privilege. So we'll go through a little bit about the context and just thinking about the evolution of how sort of the interview process to do evaluations or design programs has changed over time. We have two case studies that both happen to be with the Asian Development Bank. And we'll talk about those because they're both pretty important case studies, which had pretty significant impacts for ADB and in the market. And the tools that we used in terms of AI for research really helped us be a lot more efficient and effective in what we did. So go ahead, MJ. Okay, so Asia Clean Energy Partners is a fun-loving group. You can tell from the picture, right? This is our team at a local event in Bangkok, and we do advisory work for development sector clients and private sector clients, corporates. We look across energy systems, policy, and finance. And one of the things we do is we try to combine the technical depth with regional knowledge, and then a lot of emphasis on convening. And Ed mentioned the Asia Clean Energy Forum, which is a big event we help the Asian Development Bank organize every year. Last year, they had about 1,500 people. It was the 20th year. Next. And so you heard about us. I'm a reformed, or, I had the master's in environmental toxicology, and I took a wrong turn into energy when I went to the lab about 40 years ago, and later got a PhD. I focus mainly on sort of policy and understanding how markets work, and sort of a generalist, but spanning lots of different aspects of the energy sector. MJ comes from a power systems background, and joined us because I think he'd worked on one too many feasibility studies for wind and solar projects, and wanted to broaden his approach to the energy sector. Next. Okay, so I think you're going to take it from here, MJ?
Yes, yes. So thanks, Peter, for the introduction, and to Ed as well. So Peter gave a bit of context, and I would also add to it, like from a personal perspective, when I joined, and I can relate to the fact that we actually, as an organization, or personally as well, have not done program evaluations per se. But then again, while we're brainstorming, we said like, okay, we haven't done evaluation, but we actually have helped our clients multiple times. Actually, we're just showing two projects from ADB, but multiple times on a day-to-day basis, we work with them to conceive ideas, to design TAs. And that's probably not very different. The process is something similar. We engage with the multiple people in different stages of the program design. And so we understand the context of this presentation, and probably we kind of think that the audience here can relate to it as we move on. So what factors should be considered during the program design stage? So first of all, decisions, right? So we need to define the sectors, the priorities, and the policy reforms. And just to add to it, we're talking from a development sector perspective. So any of the clients we're working with, they're more in the public sector and the policy sector. So we also need to know the policy and regulatory environment, like what are the rules and regulations, the laws of the land that we're actually designing the program for. We need to know what's the institutional context, and because they're quite critical, we have to design the program around this. And alongside, how are the market going to react or accept it? So that also, is it a mature market? Are there any risks involved in terms of investment? And is there any access to finance? And alongside, we cannot forget the social aspects of it. And most of the programs, for sure, as you know, they'll have a lot of community aspect to it, because eventually the local public is what we're trying to kind of make the lives better for with all these development programs. So they should always be being taken into consideration when it comes to designing a program. And then finally, the technical side of things. Access to infrastructure, how ready a country is or a region is when it comes to the specific program. So this probably is not an exhaustive list, but probably broadly kind of covers everything that we need to consider when we are designing a program. So that said, what is the role of actually interviews, like stakeholder interactions, when it comes to designing a program? So that's what we're going to learn next. So why it matters to involve stakeholders. So first of all, relevance to the program. So linking the stakeholders' insights to the research. So it's not just purely talking to people, but also doing a background research with existing literatures or what's policies around that. But finding the linkage is quite important, and how the program is relevant to the people. And then impact of the planning. So the sooner we involve the stakeholders in the planning, the better is eventually to kind of devise the outcomes of the program. So that's quite critical. And then the outcomes, which we need the outcomes to be sustainable. So we start this kind of trust building and what do you call it, interaction phase. The sooner the better. And eventually we reduce the risks involved with the program when we actually undertake this process. And then eventually the practice of having everyone involved kind of emphasizes that, okay, we are taking you along with us while we are designing this. It's not just we are designing something standalone and we give it to you. Okay, this is what it is, and you have to work around this. So that kind of gives them a sense of togetherness, and so that's one of the critical aspects as well. Uh, and now Peter will discuss on the evaluation of interviews over the years from his experience. Over to you, Peter.
Yeah, if you go to the next slide. So, we're just going to tee up. We're going to go into the case studies working for the Asian Development Bank. And, I was just sort of thinking back to, I said I was an environmental toxicologist and I was going to save the world from environmental toxins and the cancer that they cause and understand risk assessment. And I took a wrong turn and ended up at Lawrence Berkeley Lab and started working with the data folks up there. Back when I was first getting in the energy field, people, it was a lot of contemporaneous handwritten notes, and then just organizing those and doing manual coding. When I was doing my PhD in the mid 1990s, I used cassette recordings, and I remember I got one of these machines where you use like you have a foot operated playback system so you could transcribe. And I remember one time I interviewed a very important person who worked for, Best Buys about their appliance practices. And I went to play back the recording the next morning. It was a fantastic interview. It was like an hour and 20 minutes, and there was nothing on it. And it's like, oh my God, there's no backup. There's no cloud. What do you do? So I literally, spent an hour and a half writing down the whole thing from memory, but that was sort of crazy. Right. And then going into the up all the way up until the time of Chat GPT, maybe a little before then, you were able to record and then send your interviews to get transcribed, and you'd be paying, you'd have a 40-page transcript from a 40-minute interview, and they charge you like $1 a minute or $1.50 a minute, and they'd have people in the Philippines or India transcribing it. And then all of a sudden, ChatGPT changed everything, and we all know what that means. So what still remains, this is just making us a lot quicker and more efficient. We can do more stuff, but really it does not help you with framing the research questions, being able to weigh the evidence, understanding the context and the causality. So for us, I mean, maybe we're a bit overly optimistic, but it's really a super enhancer. Sure, there are drawbacks, and we've seen those when people use ChatGPT and come up with meaningless jargon. But in the discussion we're going into now, we're basically taking the raw material of transcripts of people with smart questioning, and we're supercharging that process, doing about 5 times as much work than we would be able to do in the same amount of time just 5 years ago. So that's sort of a key point. Next slide.
So we go into the first case study, Peter.
Yeah, and let me just provide a little bit of background in this. Why? So Asian Development Bank. So I've known and worked with them for on and off as a consultant, or partnered with them when I was the senior climate change advisor for USAID. They become a very trusted client. And in consulting, the most important thing you need to do is to understand what the client's pain point is and what questions they want to answer. And it turns out that ADB is a big silo. It's an incredible place. I think they probably have like over 2,500 people or something. And there's a lot of silos. And when we do private sector assessments, which MJ is going to talk about now, they don't talk to each other. So a big part of the magic of what we do is we do interviews with people across 8 different sectors: energy, transport, agriculture, environment, etc. And we capture what they're doing and what the key initiatives they're doing and what their strategy is. And we play that back to the managers of ADB. And it just seems to be a magical thing for them to see what everybody else is doing across the bank. So we basically are helping to tell their stories. And that's a big part of the value of this. And as MJ laid out, the sort of participatory nature of this. It's not just us doing some clinical study and writing, our analytical insights. It's actually the insights we get from talking to people. Over to you, MJ, for the case study.
Thanks, Peter. And yeah, it's one of my first private sector assessment, I would say, working with Peter, and I cannot reiterate more the importance of stakeholder engagement in such what do you call it, assessments. Because as Peter mentioned, ADB is a huge organization, and probably it stands true for other bigger organizations as well. People do not know what the other person is doing. We did a lot of research in terms of what could work. But again, if you don't talk to the right people, then probably you will not get the most out of this work. And again, not just the people, the more people we talk with, the more insights we get. And that's where the value of AI comes in, actually. And this is what the webinar is about. So it's about, if you do everything, you interview maybe say 50 people, and then you should have a process around that, so that the information that we get from those interviews are mined very efficiently. You get what you need from them, and there's a very smart process around that. And that's where AI has helped us over the past few years. I'll tell you a bit more details on how we used it, but it's quite interesting, I would say. So specific to this assignment, this was about analyzing the private sector landscape in the Philippines, and this directly fed into one of the critical documents that ADB has for every country, as a country partnership strategies. So that fed into their 5-year plan for Philippines. And what we did is we identified key opportunities, constraints, and investment priorities across selected sectors, and particularly those aligned with climate action and sustainable development. And it was a fairly 3 to 4 months duration of an engagement. And we had an in-country partner in assist. And we covered basically 9 sectors. So basically, it was not actually purely an energy project, but we had to cover like the full breadth of sectors that ADB's private sector department could actually engage in the Philippines. And just to give you a taste of how many organizations we talked with, so list of 20 organizations, many of them in ADB, government officials, the relevant departments at least, donors, business associations, and private sector companies. So there was a full process around that, like an engagement process, and the feedback we received was quite good. And from there also, it's like the iterative process in terms of talking to them and then kind of sending over them the transcript, so that they can vet what they taught, and we get the most out of this was a very, what do you call it, well streamlined or well oiled process. And how did that look like? So first of all, we engage with the right people who can give us the insights, at least in that specific organization. We designed these questions or these interviews to be semi-structured. First of all, we have a questionnaire, but we don't, like, it's not like an objective question, like, okay, X, Y, Z, and then boom, boom, boom. It's not. So it's like, first of all, giving them some guidance, but also allowing them to tell the story, so that we get a very good, what do you call it, a real time and a very personal, their own narrative on those questions. And then it's important that we record those interviews. So and again, there's a process, like they should give their consent on being recorded, all those things. And then once we have those recordings, so we transcribe them. Here we use either AI or any specific transcription tool, so that the full text is generated. And then once the transcription is done, this is where the AI, more importantly, the AI comes into the picture. We feed those transcriptions to ChatGPT or any other AI I can imagine, with the right prompt. So prompting is probably, I was thinking of giving some examples, but I could not figure out exactly what to say. But here is the context. So the probably, and everyone can relate to me as well, the importance of prompt. Like the more airtight, the accurate your prompt is, the better the information that you get out of AI. So when you're doing like 50 interviews, if you realize down the line that, oh my God, like I did not use AI in the right way than I should have. It's not exactly giving me the information that I should have actually got in the first place. Then probably you have wasted a lot of time. So even though it's fastering the process, if you do not need no kind of figure out the right process, how to use it, probably it's not going to be as useful as it should be. So first of all, we summarize it. Everything is summarized in a very coherent way. And then we use it to mine the specific messages that will eventually help us. We have a desktop research in hand, and then we need the practical insights from these interviews to kind of feed into them. And then everything kind of, when it comes together, we get a very useful report. And just from this project perspective, and Peter will talk about another example, it was really appreciated by the client because from the literature review, they know probably what's people actually what's there in the public space. But from actual on the ground information from the interviews, the country partnership strategy was probably enhanced quite a bit. I don't have a percentage in mind, but I can attest the client kind of valued those interviews quite a bit. So, and then what some of the key takeaways, right? So beyond desktop research, as I just said, like stakeholder insights complemented it quite a bit. And it uncovered informal practices, institutional frictions, and emerging trends not reflected in the reports or data sets. Then private sector reality check, engagement with investors and firms provided direct insights into feasibility, risk perception, and bankabilities, and which is critical for exactly the intervention areas that ADB was looking for in the Philippines. And then informing sector focus and sequencing as well. So the interviews help refine the sector prioritization, sequencing by identifying where reforms, capacity building, or financing interventions would have the greatest impact. And then finally, operationalizing the CPS on the ground perspectives informed realistic ADB entry points, implementing approaches, and partnership opportunities for ADB among those key stakeholders. So that was my take on the first what do you call it, work that we're going to present. So over to you, Peter, to talk about the climate ambition plan.
Maybe go back to slide 12 for a second, MJ. So I'll tell the story about our research assistant. So we had another project like a 6 month later on critical minerals, and I was developing a strategy approach for critical minerals and in the supply chain for solar and renewable products. And we had a very smart guy who was working for us, and we'd done a bunch of interviews. And we asked him, we said, okay, start summarizing the first 5 interviews because we're going to meet with the director general. And he was like, oh, yeah, I got it. He actually didn't get it. And we had to talk to him. Finally, I had to tell him, look, talk to MJ because MJ has done this before and he knows how to do the prompts. He thought that you could just sort of say, summarize the key points in the interview. No, you can't do that. First of all, we had the interview structured so there were sort of say 5 main questions, and then when you prompt it, you're asking to articulate among those 5 questions because they can be easily found. If you just say summarize the key points, you're going to get garbage. That's really a key message. It's sort of obvious, but I remember in that case it was quite frustrating because he thought oh, I know how to use ChatGPT. I've done this before, but this sort of training is a very basic thing was really important. And I'll just wrap up, go quickly through the second case study, which is really interesting. It's different. Let's just pause on the slide. So I'll just go back one. Okay. So this is a strategy for ADB's private sector department to reach $13 billion in investment. So what?
Sorry.
We're looking at your calendar now.
Sorry.
Yes, your calendar is not full enough, MJ. What that means is that ADB has to go and work with the 25 governments or whatever they work across Asia, and they got to get a government to take a loan or they make an equity investment in something, but it's not easy to move that much money. And they were way behind. They were supposed to get between 2019 and 2030, they're supposed to get $13 billion of investment. And they were on target to get like 8. And so this was like a rescue job. Next slide. So we were basically, talking to the private sector operations department. How do you achieve? I think it's actually 12 billion is the correct number. How do they meet this target? Then we start breaking it down to okay, well, these are sort of the 4 main questions we had in our semi-structured questionnaire. What are some immediate opportunities for like quick wins? For example, you could give a line of credit to a bank for $100 million and they could give out loans for solar PV or something like that, right? What are blue sky opportunities that would really sort of ways of looking at new areas of growth that maybe would supercharge and you could actually get a lot more investment than that? And then some examples, and then some next steps or things that they think the bank should do. So we sort of framed the discussion that way. And these were basically the design criteria from ADB. And then next slide. Okay, so what we did is, this is a very ambitious project. We interviewed 40 people in, what was it, MJ, about 2 weeks?
Yes.
It was like, and I can't emphasize enough how the fact that you have an AI note taker, or you can just have a transcribe the Zoom call or the Teams call or whatever, really reduces the stress, because once you have that, all of the back end stuff takes about 1/10 the time that it used to take. So you can just focus on having a good interview and being relaxed. Okay. So we did 40, like boom, 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 boom. And, what this allowed us to do, we had so many touch points because we're interviewing people again across sectors. You see a lot of the same things coming up. So after we'd done about 20 of the interviews, or maybe even 15, we were getting some really consistent feedback on the fact that the people who were doing the deals felt like everyone else was trying to slow them down. All the environmental safeguards people, all the people who, were commenting, there'd be like one person who was the entrepreneur developing the investment and, 6 people writing comments. So it is really sort of, it unearthed some uncomfortable things that were going on. Next slide. Okay, so these are the areas across the private sector operations department that we interviewed, and so it was quite intensive to get their perspectives. And the people at the top are real private sector sort of investment banking type of people. They were really serious clients. I mean, they're all for development, but they really want to see the bottom line and how they can get to that 12 million. Next slide. Okay, so just go through a few things. We're just about at time. We'll just go one at a time. So, and then MJ will do a wrap up on more like on the AI process. But we were able to do the following for the client. They were very happy with the report. It allowed us to really prioritize between different types of opportunities, strategic directions where they could go to try to find places to invest. And that was based on data, and that was coming directly from key people with a lot of experience working across the bank. So you had a lot of credibility because you weren't just doing like 4 interviews with some random people. We were interviewing like all of the senior management in 2 weeks. Next slide. Yeah, and as I said, I just mentioned a couple of minutes ago, some of the uncomfortable things started coming out, and we raised this with management early on and tried to figure out ways, have them thinking about ways of addressing these issues. Then also it sort of you're able to highlight areas where there are disconnects between the different parts of the private sector operations. Next slide. Or sorry, next point. And so we got some really good insights from staff, and we were able to sort of say things like, 25% of the respondents mentioned that there were far too many procedures in this part of the process or things like that. It just gave us some credibility when we were making recommendations next. And at the end of the day, having coming on the back of a previous plan, which had sort of failed because they hadn't actually figured out a good strategy for this, got a lot of buy-in, a lot of credibility, and much to our surprise, 6 months after this study, we went back and not only were they confident they could make the 12 billion target, but they had actually increased their target by 50%. And it wasn't because of our evaluation, but I think this gave them the confidence to go for a bolder initiative. Next. Okay, and then take it home, MJ. I think this one more slide on sort of our
Yeah.
reflections.
So just like quick reflections on and lessons learned by a couple of practical optimists. So which is Peter and myself. So first of all, like the more people we talk with and can actually hear what they're saying, like as usual, like the bigger the data set, the better the results, right? So the more interviews we can do per an assignment, the better. So, but then that kind of gives, as I mentioned, like the importance of having a really good process around this, how to assimilate them and get the results, plus the use of AI, the help that AI gives in these days, like is quite important. So big targets work. So this is basically PSOD specific, right? So they had a huge target, and when they reflect how work actually gets done, right? So the frontline realities came from those interviews, and it was not just an abstract number. So talking to those people, they could actually realize that okay, this can be done, and that led to an increase in that figure. So we're talking about billions of dollars here. And earlier feedback creates a more nimble process. Agreed, like for both these cases, right? The sooner we engage the stakeholders, the better, and not months later, they just a report lands in their desk and they say, okay, I was not even a part of this process, and somebody's asked to do this thing by somebody up the top, the food chain. So, which probably, if I'm a part of this organization, I wouldn't appreciate that. And then again, as I mentioned initially, like people support if they recognize themselves in the narrative. So if I'm reading this PSOD's climate ambition plan, and then I see something that directly came from me, even though it was not attributed, so then I feel involved on a part of this process, and I feel valued as well. So that probably that kind of brings that togetherness to this process. And then eventually, like the importance of AI is it saves time, and but then as the human aspect cannot be ruled out. So it's not like you are working, AI is kind of what do you call it, is taking over the process. No, you are in charge of this. So you're making AI work for you, and you are setting the process, how good or how bad it is, and how AI kind of helps you out. Also, you're in charge of the process. So if your decision making of how to use AI is not correct, the eventual result probably will not be along the lines that you're expecting. So
So,
that's where
so
our present. Yes, Peter.
yeah, well, I just want to wrap up this really good. Like we've done, I think we've done 7 of these now, and AI has nothing to do with, why the client likes this work. We've done 7 of these. We've done Thailand twice. We've done Philippines. We've done Laos. We've done Cambodia. We're just did uh, and it's the process of this inclusive process of um, working for the management of a unit and basically taking soundings from a lot of people on how to improve the process or how to engage with the private sector or whatever it is. So listening and telling that story. AI is just an enabler. It allows us to do it. It doesn't help us listen better. It doesn't help us make better judgments, but it helps us get to a place where we have a solid set of data. And this mainly, I guess, applies to sort of what one would refer to as sort of qualitative program evaluation. You could apply it to quantitative, but this has been a qualitative process for these. And we've done a number of these, and we do this in almost all of our research now. Anything that involves some desk research, we validate it with interviews. And that's it.
Great. Keep the slides up.
Oh,
First of all,
okay,
uh,
okay. I will.
yeah, we'll go back. But are there any from the people who are on the webinar, the participants here, do you have any questions for MJ or Peter before I take over? If you do, unmute yourself if you can. I assume you can, or put the question in the chat function at the bottom of the screen and we'll address it. But while you do that, I don't hear anything right now. Uh, if you can go, this could have been an evaluation talk with just changing a few names on the slides. So let's go to slide 5.
Slide 5. Give me a
So what factors should be considered in program design? It's the same thing if one could ask what factors should be considered in an evaluation or an evaluation of program design. And so you would look at each of these features and the evaluator would ask very similar questions. So can you hear me? Yeah. Yes?
Yep. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Good. Okay. So from an evaluator perspective, these are the things we would ask. Similarly, if you go to slide 6, the next slide, why stakeholder involvement matters. This is so true for the evaluation.
From data to design, using AI to improve clean energy
Is there a question, or if you're not, you can ask? Or was that somebody talking to somebody else? If you are, just mute. If you have a question, let me know. No.
Yeah, I
Okay.
have muted the participants. Fine.
Oh, okay. So, the evaluator would want to know what are the stakeholder insights, for example. What are the stakeholder sustainable outcomes, the impact, and so on. So while you come from a slightly different perspective for designing programs, this is, again, what an evaluator would do. Go to slide 11. This is where I have a question for you. These are the people you interviewed. One group that's missing from the Asia Development Bank, they do have a unit, an evaluation unit. And I was wondering whether you were allowed to interview them or because they play a major role in ADB in evaluating their ADB programs primarily. Very good people there. I've known them over many years. And I was just curious, I didn't see them mentioned at all. So, what do you think?
Well, okay, so that is a good question. They, I think I tend to see them pop up when there's a milestone of a certain thread of work and they need an independent take on it. So I'll give one example. There's a big trust fund, actually the same trust fund that funded the Asia Clean Energy Forum, this big event at ADB for the first 15 years or so. But they fund a lot of other things. They fund a lot of energy efficiency initiatives. They fund a lot of renewable energy. And IED, the Independent Evaluation Department, did a really scathing evaluation about 10 years ago. And based on that, ADB went out to find a consultant to figure out how, because what they found out was that of the quote unquote clean energy projects that ADB pursued through their technical assistance and investments, only about 10% of them were energy efficiency, and they wanted to figure out why. So that's an example of how, and so the consultant they hired to help design a way of ramping up energy efficiency was yours truly. So we helped set up something called the Asia Energy Efficiency Accelerator. In my experience, I guess there's a question like, why wouldn't you have IED, the Independent Evaluation Department, do something like retroactively. Okay, you've just done 5 years in the Philippines. How did that work out? And that's
Right.
a great question. It's never come up. It's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. And they should do that more. And then, yeah, so they've never been involved in any of these. And I think it's probably just a blind spot on behalf of the clients who are hiring us.
Okay. And again, the last comment I had was regarding AI. That, as I've discussed with you previously, AI is being used by evaluators just more and more. It has its merits, but at the same time, there are some concerns, and I see now more papers are coming out, um, both on the impact side, impact evaluation process side. So I think we realize the value of AI, but we still need to be very cognizant of we're not hallucinating and coming up with wrong conclusions. So I want to leave it at that. Um, Again, thank you for the presentation. Any questions again from people on the call? Otherwise, I'm going to hand it over to Nazir, who will.
I would just maybe just
Yeah,
have one thing to emphasize, Ed, in terms of the making this work. I'll give an analogy. You know, how many of us, we've all had someone that we know or someone in our organization, our company, write a report. And at first you think, oh my God, that's great. And then you start reading it and it's AI blather. It is so annoying. And so we have to train people in our company about how to use AI and how to make sure you avoid the hallucinations and you make sure you use citations and things like that. So the 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 same thing applies. It's like garbage in, garbage out. And to the most important thing, one of the most important things we said was, you know, just MJ said it is the value of the prompt and designing the the um, the questions in a way that you can think about stacking them up and mining the data across interviews or across sectors, right? And
right.
you know, obviously, you know, there's diminishing returns. Is it better if you interview, you know, 40 people as opposed to 10? Yes. Is it better if you interview 60 people instead of 40? I'm not sure about that. But you know, having, you know, it just, we found that the management really likes the fact that you can have good stakeholder sounding, and usually you got to do, you know, outside and inside the organization. The PSOD one was just inside because they had to figure out what their problems were with their processes and why they were so slow in getting processing projects. And that's what that was about. But normally it would be more like the Philippines. And it just allows you, you can, you know, interview civil society, you interview private sector, you interview, you know, manufacturers, you interview policymakers, and it just allows you to do a lot more. At least that's our experience, and be more effective. So.
So let me have a follow-up question that was initiated by somebody on one of the participants. You know, we're always concerned when you collect data, and particularly in your interviews with key people. I'm sure you say, you know, this is confidential. We're just going to sum up. We're not going to, and we're going to make sure what you provide us doesn't get out to the wider world. It's just for us and for our report. What about AI and the possibility of a data breach, and what kind of data security do you have when AI is trying to sum up all these conversations? Do you have special mechanisms you use so it doesn't get released to the world?
Well, I'll take one part of that, and maybe you can elaborate, MJ.
Sure.
One thing it does. Okay, so first, MJ, tell them what we say every time. We say the same thing every time. Go ahead.
You better tell them what you tell them.
Yeah, I can read your mind, Peter. Go ahead.
No. What do we tell them? This is an interview. We're not going to, blah blah blah. What's our preamble?
Oh, okay. Yes, that's correct. So first of all, as a part of this interview, as actually Ed mentioned, right? Whenever we start this interview, so to kind of build that confidence, we mentioned that nothing would be attributed to the specific person being interviewed directly in the report, so that they kind of are much more open. And we always take consent before being recording anything. So that's always a part of the process. So that's kind of sets the tone before we kickstart the process. So yeah, if that answers your
Yeah, and
question.
sometimes depending on its assignment be a little different. We say, if we're not going to attribute anything to anybody. So it's sort of Chatham House rule,
Yeah.
right? You have that anonymity. But sometimes we say, if there are positive things or constructive things, and because if we're doing something that's more a market oriented thing, that's an external report, we might want to quote somebody, and we say we would let you, review your quote before we publish it. So that's it. Now, as far as AI, AI is actually really, really useful because it can mine, these 40 interviews, and it can have, the inputs from 30 people who commented on what a good flagship project would be and actually put the quotes for the people. It just is such a time saver. And that was in a case where you want to capture, you could anonymize that quote. As far as the AI data breach, I mean, it's not going, I don't know. Of course, what does Sam Altman do with the data that we all are using? We're using ChatGPT or Sergey Brin when we're using Gemini. I don't know. They probably are selling it to somebody, but that's above my pay grade. But it's we're very careful with that. I mean, it is a good question, but that's the same rules you would have in any evaluation, whether you were using AI or not. Did I answer your question?
Well, I'm going
Well,
to, Abhijit, I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Can you unmute yourself, or Nazir, can you unmute him? Because he had the question, and do you have any more
right.
follow-up? He's still there.
Uh,
Go
uh,
ahead.
Hi, sir. Good morning. Thanks for addressing my question. I got my answer. Uh, Probably this is AI is something which is actually anonymous in its own way.
Yeah.
Particularly, it is kind of a zero trust system, though it is more helpful in many ways, but still it is a zero trust system. We cannot comply upon AI on the things that we are doing, particularly in the research. Being an early career researcher, I believe and firmly believe that whenever we put some questions to AI, it answers very fundamentally. It answers, but there are certain discrepancies while sharing some data to the AI to extrapolate the answers, or the what we can say, the like the visualization. If we put some data to the AI to visualize something, then we are at our mind thinking that there must be some data breach could happen. So in that angle my question was being framed, and thank you for answering my question.
Okay. Well, I do have one quick comment about that, and
Go
then
ahead.
we got to wrap up. We just finished. We had another report on Thailand. It was a private sector assessment combined with the assessment of green finance. And the client, we had some researchers who were sort of junior researchers, and they were doing some sector reviews, like MJ mentioned. And this woman, the woman we were working with, is the chief economist for Thailand, and she said, "Look, I saw the draft you submitted. I need you to put more citations, because if anyone asks me where that comes from, I need to know where it comes from." So, we had to talk with the staff, and we said, "Look, anything where it's obvious you're sort of making a statement about a data or a fact, you need to support it with a footnote." And I mean, in my experience, we use AI in that way. It's not perfect, but if you really insist on the URLs and you do some spot checking of the URLs to, with what it's helping you come up with. But, it sort of got out of control. We just finished, it's a 200-page report. We covered 8 sectors, and we had 450 footnotes. I mean, this like, and it was like, and I had to do the final QC review. It took me hours, right? Um, so it like that would have been very hard before. It would have taken, months and months for, good, very good question, Abhijit, and well taken. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That was very interesting. Again, thank you, MJ and Peter, for your time and talk today. I'm going to hand it over to Nazir.
Thank you, Ed. We have a hand raised from Michelle. I don't know if we have time for that, for a quick question or
Okay.
Michelle here.
I'm
Okay.
happy to
yes.
answer a question. Yeah, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Peter and MJ, for the nice presentation. My name is Tengod, and I just have a one question and then a part of a review. So, speaking of the AI aspect in terms of initializing it for various components of the analysis, I really see it as a very welcoming events. And I also have one question. The one question I have is in the part of the AI integration, does it have after the transcription for the TTS, that is the after the interviews has been transcribed into text, does it enter into a program? Or is there any back-end program where it enters and then there is a form of a RAG that is decision making, bias decision making from the program, which now helps to inform the decision letter, or it's manually prompted on ChatGPT or AI? I mean,
Yeah, that's a great question. And by the way, thank God we met him at Bangkok Climate Action Week, and he's a researcher at Chulalongkorn University, which is one of the best universities in Thailand. Good to see you. Thank God.
thank you so much.
So yeah, I mean, I think MJ can explain that maybe a little better how we do that. I mean, it depends, right? But I use something called Read AI for all of our meetings. Like all of our meetings have Read AI, and I find that the summaries that come out that it makes embedded in the program, it makes a summary. I find it's much better to actually take either the transcription or the summary and put it into ChatGPT to make a better summary. But maybe you could just talk briefly about that process because you could use a couple of different steps, MJ.
Yes, and I mean, for example, if at all the person is not, I mean, your interview is not comfortable being recorded, you can have handwritten notes and you can upload them into an AI probably. And these days they're smart enough to, if your handwriting is legible enough to understand what you've written, if you're recording them just like in person but still recording them, they're like transcription tools like Otter AI, or so we can upload, and even Chat GPT as well. We can upload the recorded conversation, and that can actually what do you call it, like assign specific names to the conversations when when it generates a transcript. And if it's online, it's quite straightforward. So all these tools, etc., that come with a transcription tool, I mean, feature already. So those are quite straightforward, and normally many a times like it's a practical thing. Like, for example, if your transcription, if your recording is not up to the mark, probably the quality of the transcription will not be that good as well. And that kind of plays a role in eventually the output you get, right? So you have to make sure all the conversations are well heard. If it's recording, in terms of note taking, this becomes a lot of big challenge. If the quality of your notes is not good enough, the eventual output is not good. So, I mean, as Peter mentioned, like I was showing, like, in probably 15 years down before, it was all handwritten and the process was quite tedious. But these days, we have tools that makes the life much easier.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. Thank you, Peter, for the very insightful presentation and discussion and sharing very practical examples. Thanks to all the participants. We will be sharing the discussion notes along with the webinar regarding and the slides with you. I have put a couple of links in the chat. We'll be very happy to for you if you follow us on our LinkedIn page and be part of the very active discussion that we have there. You can find wealth of resources related to energy and evaluation on our website. I have again put the link there, and also on our YouTube channel. You will find previous webinars and presentations from previous conferences. That's all for today. Thank you so much. Hopefully, we will pick up with our new webinar next month that Ed already shared, and I will be sharing more details with you in the following. Thank you. Have a good day and good evening.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.